So Sheila asks, what happens after the 1,000-year millennium?
Nice. So, millennium, seems like every week we get a question on the millennium. It's a very fascinating topic. Love it. So let's start at where we see the millennium. And that word never actually comes up in the Bible, but the Bible talks about this period of 1,000 years, which is a millennium. So let's start at Revelation 20 at verse 1. And we see that there was an angel coming down from heaven, having a key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold of the dragon, the serpent of old, who is Satan, and he bound him up for 1,000 years. So during this millennium, Satan is chained up. We'll talk about what the chain means, but I believe it means that these are figurative chains of circumstance that basically he's stuck on earth. He can't do anything. And verse 3 says, and he was cast into the bottomless pit. And the mighty angel shut him up and set a seal on him so that he could deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years were finished. But after these things, he will be released for a little while. So after the millennium, Satan is going to be released. Before that, he's kind of in this captivity. How is he in captivity? Where is this bottomless pit? So if you look at Genesis 1 verse 2, it says, the earth was without form and was void, and darkness was on the face of the earth, or was on the face of the deep. So that word deep there it's a Hebrew word, but that Hebrew word translates into the Greek as abyssos, and that word abyssos in the Greek is what we translate as bottomless pit or the abyss. It's the same word. Basically, all this is telling us is as the earth was back in the beginning before God formed it, made the mountains, the oceans, all this stuff, the earth was void without form, and God is going to put the earth back to that state at the beginning of the millennium. And there's going to be no people alive on earth. Satan, thus, if he's stuck on earth and there's nobody alive for him to tempt and to interact with, he is basically trapped by chains of circumstance. Bored, he can't do anything. So how do you release Satan then for a little while? We'll talk about that, but basically you can then infer if the death of everybody and nobody on earth restricts Satan, bringing people back is going to allow Satan to go back to what he's doing to tempt them. And by the way, if you look at Jeremiah 4, 23 to 27, we see sort of the same imagery again about this earth being desolate. I beheld the earth, and indeed it was without form and void, and the heavens, they had no light because the sun had been darkened. And I beheld, and indeed there was no man. So the earth, there's no people, and all the birds and the heavens had fled. So, I mean, even the animals more or less are gone. And I beheld, and indeed the fruitful land was a wilderness, and all its cities were broken down. So here we know we're not having a flashback to creation. We're talking about a time where all the cities, everything that's been built is destroyed. And so this is during that time of the millennium when Satan is locked up. And thus says the Lord, the whole land shall be desolate, yet I will not make a full end. We'll come back to that. What does that mean? Not a full end. It's not the end of the story for earth. But if we go back to Revelation 4, it says, and I saw thrones, and they that sat on them, and judgment was committed to them. More or less, we see there's these people from earth, right, who are up in heaven, and they're judging. They are alive. They live and reign with Christ for 1,000 years. We're told this in verse 4. And then on verse 5, it says, but the rest of the dead did not live again until the 1,000 years were finished. All right. So at the end of the 1,000 years, we're getting a hint here that the dead, the wicked dead, will be brought back. This is the first resurrection, referring to those who are alive and reigning with Christ. Blessed and holy is he who is a part of the first resurrection. Over such the second death has no power, but they shall be priests with God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. But now, when the 1,000 years have expired, this is verse 7, Satan will be released from his prison, And he will go out and deceive the nations which are on the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together for battle, whose number is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth and surrounded the camp of the saints and of the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. So right there, we're told the story. So Satan's released because the wicked have been brought back to life. And Satan sets about to tempt them and turn them against God. They surround the holy city. So the holy city is there on earth. At the end of Millennium, the holy city comes down, plants itself on earth. God caused that to happen. And then Christ raised the dead. Satan tempts them. They all surround the holy city and plan to attack it. But do they prevail? No, because as we just heard, fire comes down from God out of heaven and devours them. So they get destroyed. And it was interesting, if you look at the term Gog, Magog, that's not unique to Revelation. John and Christ through John is pointing us to Ezekiel 38, starting at verse 16. We see that the prophet says, "You will come up against my people Israel like a cloud, the cloud to cover the land. It will be in the latter days, and I will bring you against my land, so that the nations will know me when I am hallowed in you, O Gog, before their eyes." If we skip to verse 18, it says, "And it shall come to pass at the same time when Gog comes against the land of Israel, says the Lord, that my fury will show in my face." And often fury of God is associated with fire, flames. And this is what we see. So back to verse 10 in Revelation 20 says, "The devil who deceived them was cast into lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the prophet are, and they will be tormented day and night forever and ever." This is figurative, really figurative here, about basically Satan's system. Everything he put in place is going to be gone, wiped out. And then I saw a great white throne and him who sat on it, from whose face the earth and the heavens fled away, and there was found no place for them, Satan, the devil, these people. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before the Lord, and books were open, and another book was open, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to the works, by the things which were written in the books. So they surrounded the holy city. We know they get destroyed by fire, but before that happens, we're told they're going to be judged. The books will be open, and they're going to be shown everything they did. And remember, we even talked about the works, right? The works reveal whether you're a son of God or a son of the devil. Your works don't save you, but your works reveal what's inside you. And it's these works that then God's going to reveal to them, say, hey, this is how you lived. This is what you did. This is, you chose not to be my child, and be revealed to them during this time of judgment. And judgment can mean also execution of a judgment. So what does that look like? And then Revelation 20, verse 15, it says, "And anyone not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire." So they're thrown into lake of fire. If we back up one verse, now, you notice we keep jumping around. Revelation is not necessarily in chronological order. It's this complex poetic structure called a chiasm. So people struggle because, well, wait, this just happened, now it happened again, and now it's happened again. Like, what's the exact order? I'm telling you, this is the order. So the wicked are then thrown into lake of fire. They're destroyed. Then Revelation 20, verse 14 says, "Then death and Hades were cast into the lake of fire." This is the second death. So what does this mean? Like, death, Hades, same thing. This is just ultimate destruction, obliteration. That's the second death. Like, they're being destroyed. They're gone, the wicked. And because this is the end of sin, this is the end of death, this is how God, in a sense, is putting an end to death. That's what it's saying. There's going to be no more death. And this is confirmed when we look at Revelation 21, verse 4. And it says, "God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. And one of my favorite verses that begins this chapter, in fact, is verse 1. It says, "Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there was no more sea." That sea is going back to language from Genesis, right? Of these waters, these chaotic waters that of an unformed void earth. And it's saying no longer the earth in its void form, but we're back to now a new recreated earth. And you could continue reading in Revelation 21 and 22 what that looks like with the holy city and how beautiful it is when it, being on earth, and with the water, the tree of life, and just everybody dwelling with God, and just the brightness that he fills the earth with, and how we don't even need the sun. There will be a sun, but we don't even need it because there's so much light and glory coming from God. So that just sort of is the beautiful sequence of events that we get from shortly after the millennium. So I hope that answered your question. Thank you so much, Sheila, for asking.